Hi, my name is Brute Norse and you're watching Brute Norse. Lately, I've been reading a lot about local folklore, roughly in the area where I am from. There's no better source, probably, than this motherfucker right here. Trond Sjursson Haukenæs, commonly and more famously known as simply T.H.S. Haukenæs, or Haukenæs. He wrote a bunch of books about local superstitions, folk traditions, and so on. And in this book, Kvindherred, he talks about all the stuff that went on in Kvindherred in southwest Norway. He chronicled famous local personalities, archaeology, customs, songs, and superstitions, including several stories about the so-called Hulderfolk, or hidden people, not too dissimilar to their Icelandic cousins, though the Norwegian variety tends to be a little bit more sinister. He also talks about Bjødlurebasen, the man of Bjødlure, or the man of Bell-Ravine. So, Bjødlurebasen is a skeleton, or rather a pile of bones, allegedly of a murder victim, left more or less undisturbed by the local populace for hundreds of years, until it finally caught the attention of the Bergen Museum just a couple of years ago, in part because increased traffic through the area was threatening Bjødlurebasen's safety. Nobody quite knows who Bjødlurebasen is, but local legend has a suggestion. They say that Bjødlurebasen was in fact a young boy, or young man, looking to woo the daughter of a local farmer on the farm of Øvrehus. The father, who did not approve, whacked the young man and left his remains in the ravine as a warning to anybody else who might seek to marry his daughter. This supposedly happened just a few hundred years ago, but that's impossible, because carbon dating has determined that the skeleton was in fact from the Roman Iron Age, about 1700 years ago. Proving yet again that truth really is stranger than fiction. So what did people do with this skeleton just sitting around in the outskirts of their village? Well, they did exactly what everybody else would in their situation. Well, before I get into that, I should probably say that skeleton is probably selling it a little too high, because what really remained in later years was the bowl of the skull, and maybe the leg bone or whatever, thigh bone, and but people would take it to dances, to parties. It was just enough for them to grab and go, take for a little stroll, or something fun to do while you were drinking or whatever. I know this because I've spoken to a guy who is a descendant of the alleged killer. Of course, vindicated by archaeology. And speaking of local archaeology, so Øvrehus is right below Bjødlure, and it's actually right adjacent to another farm called Nerhus. Nerhus is interesting archaeologically because, well, they actually uncovered a very important late migration era burial from the site. So significant, in fact, that after 1981, which was when they excavated it, some archaeologists started talking about the so-called Nerhus phase. But that's actually not what prompted me to initially make this video. Rather, it was the bizarre story of Hinkepelo, a strange and unfortunate character that somehow ties all of this together. Because the farm Nerhus didn't just have a fantastic late migration era, transitional towards the Vendel era burial, it was also the home farm of a very interesting character. And that's the woman called Hinkepelo, or Hobble-Bolt, as I kind of staggeringly tried to translate it. So, Trond Sjursson Haukenæs describes her kind of in the same section where he describes encounters with hidden people. The book is filled with all sorts of sordid stories about, like, young men basically being molested by older girls and whatnot. And Hinkepelo is sort of a social realistic tale of maybe how it was to be insane in pre-modern times, but also in its own way it's also kind of a supernatural story. So I made an attempt at a translation here, which I will read to you. Hinkepelo, or Hobble-Bolt. Such was called a girl who lived long ago at the farm Nerhus in Österpolen. The name Hobble-Bolt she apparently got for how she constantly waddled and hobbled as she walked. Her true name was rightly Ingebjørg, but this was seldom used, as one might understand. Supposedly she was a rather strange grouch, it is said, who preferred to stay outside in the ravines and forest and was rarely home. Still, she could often be found sitting out all night, frying bread in the moonlight, because she thought well about how nicely the moon rattled. When her mother was pregnant with her, she had once seen a fox before her, and hence her daughter came to have a fox's nature. Suspicious and skittish she was too, and when she didn't want people to know where she went, she turned her shoes so that the heel stuck forwards. Summer or winter, it was impossible to get her to lie at home. Every now and then there might be a Christmas Eve where she did, but then they had to pour her drinks heavy and fare very carefully with her. But then she might also have many strange things to tell, about the hidden people, the dead, and such. She had especially good knowledge about Beard Luba, since she had found him laying in a ravine. He had big silver buttons on his sweater. When she wanted to take the buttons, he said, "Touch me not." Since then, she was more afraid than before. Many bags and sacks she collected, and she was unbelievably worried for them. One time she had wandered outside the fence of the farm. Two girls went up on the loft to peek at her bags, but no sooner had they touched the ties before she was over them and chased them off. Since then she was more wary and stayed at home somewhat more. She didn't get terribly old. She had a brother in Bergen, and when she once went to visit him, she was killed by the young boys. They beat her to death with a rock. That Hobble-Bolt had to endure such a hard life as she did shows that there wasn't much going on in terms of culture and newfangled things such as asylums and sanatoriums in those days as opposed to these days. Less things would have gone very differently for the poor thing. And that's what Haukenæs has to say about her. That's all I had to share today. Thank you very much for watching.